and the Kenya Kwanza is keyword, Mr. Speaker, in the apex of the law, in the supreme law of the land, and in the Constitution in Article 108 sub-Article 2 that was also read by Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah. Mr. Speaker, the article is clear that the leader of majority shall be the leader of the majority party or coalition of parties. And going by that, Mr. Speaker, in simple terms, it is very clear that Azimio, kindly give me time. Mheshimiwa, I don't know why you are so excited. Mr. Speaker, going by that fact, it is very clear, Mr. Speaker, that Azimio, One Kenya Coalition Party is the majority party in the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, going by the, just keep quiet, one. I know you know only was English, so just keep quiet. Mr. Speaker, going by the rules of interpretation, the literal rule, the golden rule, and the purposive approach, the facticity of the fact is that Azimio Alliance, Azimio One Kenya Alliance is a coalition, is the majority coalition party. Mr. Speaker, number two, we talked about marriage. Mr. Speaker, Azimio is a subsisting marriage, and in this marriage is a potential polygamous marriage. And Mr. Speaker, this marriage is not voidable because there was consummation in this marriage. Mr. Speaker, the person who presided over this marriage was overqualified, Mr. Speaker. And then, Mr. Speaker, the grounds for divorce, number one, is adultery or unfaithfulness, which we never experienced in our marriage, Mr. Speaker, because we campaigned together happily. Mr. Speaker, another ground is irreconcilable differences, which we never experienced, Mr. Speaker, in our marriage. And Mr. Speaker, a ground of insufficient or lack of finances has never been a ground. That our partners, having seen that Kenya Kwanza was forming the government, they ran away. Mr. Speaker, that marriage is not voidable. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about Article 36, as quoted by Honorable Didmas Baraza on the Bill of Rights, the right to associate, Mr. Speaker, there are limitations to the bills of right, including the right to life. Mr. Speaker, in the doctrine of necessity, in the case of the Queen versus Dudley and Stevens in the United Kingdom, Mr. Speaker, you know when these defendants were on a trip, a voyage, Mr. Speaker, as I finish.
The ones who ate a small boy.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the two defendants killed Mr. Parker and fed on him, ate him. Then, Mr. Speaker, in the High Court, it was decided that it was not necessary to take life. But upon appeal, Mr. Speaker, it was decided, they were vindicated, that it was necessary for them to take the life because either way they would have died. Therefore, there are limitations to any law, Mr. Speaker. Be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, our marriage was...
Babu, the court said they should have cast lots as to who should be eaten.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, you are diverting law. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I would like to say that this requires simple interpretation, and we've already been given direction by the majority leader and the majority whip, Honorable Junet, and the majority leader, Honorable Wandai, on the direction to take on this matter, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable Ndindi Nyoro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I first want to thank the people of Kiharu for giving me another chance to come and serve them here in the August House. And Mr. Speaker, actually singularly thank them because they advised me not to have any campaign materials, that they would elect me without any. And they actually did that, Mr. Speaker. I also want to applaud the people of Kenya for voting and conducting our elections in a very peaceful manner, Mr. Speaker, and that is why we are all here celebrating our democracy. Going to the issue, Mr. Speaker, I remember very well when we were recalled from recess, Mr. Speaker, to come and discuss the amendment of the Political Parties Act, Mr. Speaker. We looked subdued then because we are facing people in this house who were chest dumping, telling us that they are the system and their way was the highway. Mr. Speaker, we advised them that it is important that this house continues to make laws for posterity and for the good of all. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the bad law they passed, Mr. Speaker, has put them in the situation that you are in today. Mr. Speaker, the question before this house is on who is the majority. Which team is the majority in this house? And Mr. Speaker, this is very clear. We have Kenya Kwanza, where I belong, organized. It is a coalition of political parties. There are agreements, Mr. Speaker, of the constituent parties. We went to the elections, Mr. Speaker, and the parties that make the coalition of Kenya Kwanza emerged victorious insofar as majority is concerned. Mr. Speaker, it has been said there before, but it is good for me to put to record that UDA, the party I belong, we have 145 members in this house. Ford Kenya, Mr. Speaker, the SIBA party, we have 6 members in this house.
Yes, order. There's a point of order. Honorable Elisha.
Mr. Speaker, as one of the celebrated MPs from Game, I want to remind my brother of phonetics. You know, you can't use on or to. You must be clear on the language you're using, please. Speak good English, please.
Mr. Speaker, we may not have time to respond to every frivolities, Mr. Speaker. Ford Kenya has got 6, ANC 8, UDM 8, Mr. Speaker, Chap 2, PA 3, TSP 2, DP, MDG, NAP Kenya, MDDG 1 each, Mr. Speaker, and CCM 1. That makes a total of 179 members in this National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, that is already majority. If you add even, Mr. Speaker, the 10 members, independent members, who are currently leaning towards the majority side, Mr. Speaker, you can clearly see now we have almost a supermajority. But there are other issues, Mr. Speaker, insofar as some of the parties I mentioned is concerned. And I am going to the other side, Mr. Speaker, of Azimio, One Kenya Alliance. They purport to have tabled some agreement here, Mr. Speaker, which you have already voided. Mr. Speaker, an agreement signed on a blank paper, Mr. Speaker, at night in a dark room, where most of the material is not given to all the parties, Mr. Speaker, and under duress. There is no contract, there is no agreement that can be made in those kind of circumstances. Mr. Speaker.
Order. Yes, Honorable Babu.
Speaker, what Honorable Ndindi Nyoro is saying, Mr. Speaker, I know they are important and detailed, but the problem is that the most important parts are not detailed and the most detailed parts are not important. Mr. Speaker, it is very unparliamentary for him to act in a frivolous way, Mr. Speaker, by saying that the documents were signed in a dark room, Mr. Speaker. Did he see it, Mr. Speaker? That is out of order. Was he there, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, because I can see my time is already up, I call upon... Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I was just saying, Mr. Speaker, that the agreements, the purported agreements made on the other coalition, Mr. Speaker, they cannot start any test. They were made under duress, again in dark rooms and at night, Mr. Speaker. Most of these people were given blank pages to sign, and there is no page with content that is countersigned by those signatories, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our country is in paralysis.
Ndindi, your time is up. Sabina Chege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity.